Hey Mythic Baddies, it's Becky today. I'm going to be talking about a book called Bitter Crown of Thistle by Alisha Galvan. If you don't like spoilers, you might want to turn back now if you're planning on reading it. A link will be in the description below. And here we go. The prologue begins with a spider, and it's a female serial killer who seeks out pedophiles and takes them out. At first, I actually thought that the serial killer was the main female character, but that's a plot twist for the end. It wasn't. The main male character was a man who was emotionally and physically abused as a child. His mother acted like she never wanted him, and the kids in his grade level always made fun of him. His name was Raymond, and when he saw Caroline, he became obsessed with her to the point where he ends up making all these plans and building a suite in his basement so that he could take her home. And then once he got her home, it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. She wasn't going to fall in love with him. It was not anything like that. He didn't abuse her at first because he really had it stuck in his head that he was going to be in love with her. And by abuse, I mean like sexually abused. He just kept her in this suite where whenever he didn't get his way or she didn't act how he wanted, he would turn her water off and he would turn her lights off. And eventually he was using her phone to also torment her husband Nathan and her best friend Betty. There was a few parts after she was kidnapped where I really thought that Betty and Nathan were going to sleep together, and it was just out of hurt, not really out of pleasure, but they did not. And they were still concerned for Caroline, and they looked for her the entire time. They never stopped. But back to Ray. Since he was bullied so much, he thought that he could make someone see the real him and love him. Kidnapping her was not the way to go. After he got her in there, he started changing, like, mentally, where he was more confident on the outside, where he had previously been really obese. He started losing weight. He wasn't, like, in shape, didn't get in shape, but it gave him the confidence to talk to another woman that he had met at church, and they all went out to dinner together. She had a daughter, and he actually brought the girlfriend and the daughter to his house, even though Caroline was in the basement. And the daughter, went to go use his computer and found pictures of Caroline and didn't say anything to her mother. And then he started treating the daughter like crap. And every time he would see her from the side, he would grill her, giving her dirty looks and making her afraid. And he enjoyed making her afraid. Whereas before that, he probably would have just thought that she was an annoying little girl. But her and her mom were so close to the basement that if she had screamed, if she had yelled one time, they would have heard her, especially because he chained her to the wall and started leaving the suite door open so she could see the exit but couldn't reach it. Eventually, he actually does take Nathan and keep him in the basement so they can hear each other but can't see each other. Right before he took Nathan and put him in the basement across from her, he had been waiting in Nathan and Caroline's house for Nathan to get home because they had just been out on a wild goose chase that he set up with the corpse of his dog because he put peanut butter all over Caroline and was letting the dog lick it off, and Caroline went a little bit crazy and killed the dog, and that drove him over the edge. So he took his dog and put it in a graveyard and then texted Nathan's phone and said, your wife's body is by, what's their name, Mary? I don't remember her last name. They went to dig up to see if Caroline was in there, and they couldn't find her. All they found was the dog. And the dog had a microchip, so they gave it to the police. And then they found Ray, but for some reason, they let him off the hook, even though Nathan was questioned quite a bit. Even her mother even thought that it was Nathan, even though neither one of them actually got along with or liked her mother. But that was the thing that happened at the end. The fact that Ray thought that Caroline was cheating on Nathan because he didn't know that Trevor was her brother, and he was leaving She was actually leaving to go hang out with her brother to rekindle their relationship, and they were stargazing. But that's where I got confused as to if Caroline was the serial killer or the persona Amber. I didn't know for certain until the end that they weren't the same. Amber in the prologue was the spider, and Caroline was just targeted because he thought that she was cheating, but she wasn't. Amber, on the other hand, when I got confused because it mentioned in the beginning that she had a brother and her mother were abusive, but not in the same way as Caroline. I didn't realize that till the end, which that was a twist. But there at the end, Ray had been drinking and he was staggering drunk. And I guess he went to go down the stairs so that he could do a little bit more torturing. And he actually tripped and fell down the stairs, hit his head, and broke his arm. Nathan was able to get a blowtorch and melt off his handcuffs. So he had blisters all the way around his wrists. But that wasn't even the kicker. Goodness, I forgot. Let me back up. He actually saw Amber because Penny's daughter, the one that he was making uncomfortable on purpose, reported him to the school, and Amber actually found out, the serial killer. She was going to go take him out. And when she got there, he was like, I'm going to pluck this flower. This is pure selfishness. And he actually pulled a gun on her and put her in the basement, in the suite with Caroline, and locked the door. Then he started drinking, was sitting on the steps drinking, and that's when he came back down later drunk, fell down, and the blowtorch fell off the shelf because Nathan was tied to the shelf that was bolted to the wall with a noose around his neck so he couldn't get away. And his hands were cuffed with the metal cuffs behind his back. So he lit that blowtorch and pulled his wrists apart and melted those handcuffs off of his hands, tore his hands up. Then he passed out. And I was like, oh my gosh, is Ray going to wake up before he does, before he can get to Caroline? But Ray didn't wake up, and Nathan got up and mustered all of his physical strength to unlock the suite door, and Amber helped Caroline out, even though Caroline had a broken arm and a leg. They took Ray into the suite and tied him up, and then they carried Nathan upstairs. But Caroline was naked, and Nathan didn't really have anything either, so they actually had to wear Ray's clothes in order to leave. Amber asked Caroline if she wanted her to kill Ray or something along those lines. She wanted to prove that she was a better person than Ray, so she said no, leave him alive. Amber said, okay, well, don't send the police until the morning. Later, Amber sends Caroline a videotape of the torture, and that was like my best. Like, I loved that part where it didn't, like, so we weren't in the scene of the torture, but it does describe what happened to him after, and he deserved every bit of it for making that little girl uncomfortable, for making Caroline suffer so badly in that basement, for making Nathan suffer and killing Betty, which that was a shock to me as well. When he was waiting in their house, Betty had come looking for Nathan to see if he was home yet, and he wasn't, and she turned the corner, and Ray axe chopped her in the face, and it cleaved her face in half. So he definitely deserved the torture that he got. I just want to also apologize because I have ADHD, and even though I have notes, my brain is going faster than my mouth. I keep going to the beginning, to the end, to the beginning, to the end, to the beginning. So I'm sorry. That being said, I would rate this book 4.5 to 5 stars. The only qualm that I had was that the chapters did seem kind of long, but they're broken up with the different POVs that are numbered. This has been the best thriller that I have read in a very long time. I usually like to try to stick to indie books just because I am really close friends with an indie author, and I feel like the indies need that support and that community. Any indie book that I can read and share, especially this one, was so good. I'm actually reading Yesterday's Empire by Alisha Galvan right now. I will be talking about that one in the future. And with that, I'll see you next time on Mythic Books After Dark.